Thank you for visiting the FCFP YouTube channel. We want to thank our subject matter expert David Buchanan from Delap. This is the second part in a three-part series.
When it comes to ransomware, let's look at this word cloud. On this word cloud, we have over about 241 ransomware variants, and this isn't all-inclusive of what's out there. The important thing to note when you look at this is, let's look at some that you might recognize. We'll have, WannaCry, we go, Locky, Crisis. These ones have shown up in the news. The interesting fact is, amongst all of these, less than 30% of them have decryptors available. Meaning that if you get hit by any of the other 70% of ransomware variants that are on this screen right now, either through security research or through sloppy behavior on the hacker side, there aren't any publicly available decryptors if you get hit by this, which means you're stuck with either restoring your data from a backup as long as the backup hasn't been encrypted, or you're going to find yourself paying a ransom and hoping that you get your data back. A couple numbers from a company known as Datto, D-A-T-T-O. Around 85% of companies that were targeted with ransomware are down for a week at least. 82% of these infections were triggered by email clicks or lack of staff training. So lack of staff training would involve going to an infected website or installing software that is not approved by the company that might have been infected, things like that. And then you've got, of that number, 63% of businesses don't have policies or procedures in place to guide personnel on how to respond to an infection. And this would be your incident response or incident prevention procedures. And it's really important to have those. And when you look at how they get in, again, we'll review this. One, direct phishing emails or targeted phishing emails, which is called spear phishing, targeting people that attackers believe based on their title likely have administrative rights or have access to systems that they can use to further their infection. Targeting unpatched servers or workstations, computers that just haven't been patched properly, systems that haven't been secured with just good security 101 baseline controls. And then, of course, lack of proper controls around remote access, not requiring a hardened VPN to get access into those systems remotely, or not using multi-factor authentication. Let's look at an example now. And here we go. So we've got this phishing email. And within that, we have the individual that gets impacted. And then we have, that's right here. Then we have the infection point. So someone clicks on an email, their computer gets infected. And then from that point, many variants of ransomware have a functionality that behaves like a worm virus, where it seeks out any network connected drives, like network shares, departmental file shares, or other network systems, and tries to use those connections to further its infection, spread the ransomware to other systems, and then progressively start encrypting and locking down data and systems. And this is a common route, resulting in a couple examples of pop-ups, ransomware notification pop-ups with two variants. Some major examples: WannaCry, Locky, Crisis, NotPetya are just some examples of ransomware families that have shown pop-ups similar to these. On the left, you have a fake FBI notice. And these are designed to really create that fear, uncertainty, and doubt feeling, that adrenaline rush that says, oh, I need to do something fast. Even if I don't do any of this illegal activity, it's meant to create that fear and to elicit a fast response due to that fear, to not wanting to be in trouble. And you'll find that often the fines or the ransoms that are being requested in this are, in a way, they're meant to be reasonable. So you'll notice this one is $200. Often you'll see Bitcoin requests that amount anywhere from $500 to $2,000 in ransomware. It's meant to be a thing of, I don't want to ask for too much money. I want it to be reasonable enough that you'll pay it. Because ransomware, it's all about getting paid. And it's a big business. Two real-world examples I want to share. One, on the right, you have a South Korean web hosting provider, Nayana, agreed to pay almost 400 Bitcoin after ransomware infected 153 servers, impacting around 3,400 customers, which isn't that many in the grand scheme of things. And they paid about $1 million at the time. On the left side, and this is an article from last year, meaning the attack occurred in July of 2018, Erie County Medical Center in Buffalo, New York, estimated it spent around $10 million responding to a ransomware attack. And the interesting thing is, of that $10 million, half of it roughly, about $5 million, was specifically related to costs related to computer hardware, software, and consulting expenses needed to remediate and respond to the attack. So, on the scale, we've got $10 million and we've got a $30,000 ransomware demand. Now, a lot of us have a start feeling of, I don't negotiate. Why would I ever want to pay a ransom? And it's true that paying a ransom does not guarantee that your data is returned. But we'll discuss a little bit later on some reasons why it might be best to pay the ransom. We'll go with a quick scenario, and there will be some questions I'm going to pose to everyone on the webinar. And feel free to chime in responses via chat if you like, or just think about the questions. And first, I want to point out the individual that I have on screen here. This person does not exist. There's a website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, and it uses AI machine learning to create unique, random human faces that look quite good unless you zoom it up really close. And we use those for research profiles and the like, so it doesn't trigger facial recognition. Also to ensure I can use slides without needing to disclose someone's identity. But in this case, we have a ransomware attack. And I'm going to say, put yourself in the shoes of an individual, whether you're in technology or not, or department head or not, and you've been receiving reports of users or from your colleagues or people under you and your team of individuals not being able to access files on your computer. And one provided the following screenshots, which we'll take a look at. And there's some questions that I want you to think about as we go through these. Question 1 is, what do you do first? Question 2, who are you contacting? Who do you involve? Third question, how are you responding to your end users, or in this case, to your team, to the person who reported it? If so, how do you communicate? And then these are more technical questions, but it's questions to think about asking your IT team is, do you have data backups? Is your company actually verifying the integrity of those data backups, or is it just set and forget and hope it works? So think those questions, and let's look at some of the examples. Here's a couple screenshots that will say this user provided you. I can't access my files. This is what it looks like. And check this out. Got this long file name with a .locky extension. This is classic ransomware behavior. Within the folder structure, the majority of, I won't say all ransomware variants, but the majority will look similar to this, where files are encrypted and the name's changed. And then in each folder, there is a recovery instructions, otherwise known as your ransomware note. And if we look at this is that ransomware note. Of course, important information. And one thing to note is sometimes the English is great, sometimes it's not. Again, the point is to get paid for their point. All of your files are encrypted with RSA 2048 and AES 128-bit ciphers. And they're kind enough to include links to the Wikipedia references for those two to show they mean business and they use good encryption, right? And they give you links of how to get to a true ransomware note, which is where they would define how much you owe them and how to pay them. And then, of course, if you look at these links, they don't look like standard website links because they are dark web links. And in this case, they even provide you instructions on how to install a Tor browser. Tor is the onion router browser, so you can access the dark web. Really nice then, right? That's one example. Here's another example. In this case, this might look familiar to some folks. This is actually, in one instance that I assisted an organization with, this specific case, an accounting computer was fully encrypted. And in this case, this is a selection of some QuickBooks template files, letter files. And we have the original, and then we have the encrypted version, the ransomware infected version. Dot enciphered in this case with the ransom note, which reads, in this case, very short and sweet. Hi, all your files encryption. And if you want them decrypted, you got to pay me 1 Bitcoin, which isn't crazy depending on the market. And it tells you how to communicate, gives an email address, and often with ransomware, this email address will change from time to time, or if it's from the same criminal group or the same team, it might be the same email address. And just to reiterate, this is the same case with, to some degree, all variants of ransomware. You have encrypted files, which denies you access to an application or data, and you have a ransom note because they want to get paid. The end result is the same. So what does that mean for us, right? What does that mean? You got data loss, temporary or permanent, hopefully not permanent. You've got operational disruptions, and this is where risk comes into play, right? You have to define how much does it cost me or my team or my organization if I'm down for an hour, if I'm down for 4 hours, if I'm down for a day or a week. You've got opportunity cost, lost productivity, increased stress. You have financial losses related to, well, consulting fees, hardware, software expenses, insurance deductibles. You know, depending on if it's a reportable event, you might lose client trust or have a ding on your client, your company reputation. All of these are potential impacts that you have to deal with. Going back to, do you back up your data? And a lot of folks will say, yeah, I know we back up our data. And I say, that's great, but it might not be good enough. You know, if you have a backup job that runs full backups only and overwrites previous backups as it works, your backup could be infected as well. You know, in network connected devices that manage your online, let's say online production machines, if it's in a manufacturing environment, what if that machine gets infected and you can't run a production line? That's a big risk, right? That could have a direct tie to revenue impact. Humans are hackable. There's this kind of running joke, if you will, with IT professionals that if you want to protect your computer, you unplug it from the internet and turn it off. And we're like, yeah, that would work, but it's also dumb because you can't do that. We use computers to run the business, to serve our clients, serve our teams. And then when you look at the human side of things, humans are really hackable. We're, you know, socially engineered or convinced to click on something that maybe we shouldn't, or to believe someone's in a position of authority and they need something right away. And with that in mind, you know, the best way to protect your data is probably to get rid of everyone. But that is obviously a really, really, really poor decision because we rely on our teams. Humans are our strength. So what do? The answer has to be training, has to be a security awareness training program. And there's a ton out there, and some are silly and some are dry and boring. But here's the thing is, I found if your security awareness training is interesting, engaging, and sometimes if it's corny, people will remember it. If it's simple, concise, and even a little bit silly, it's something that will stick with you. And Attackers only have to exploit one weakness to cause havoc in our environment. To prevent this, you have to be on task 100% of the time. And that's not reasonable. We think about risk management. We don't go for 100% confidence. We're looking at what is a reasonable confidence level. So we want to have a kind of defense in depth strategy, layers of controls that work together to reduce our attack surface. And a big part of that is providing security awareness training. And we're, for the most part, humans, we're creatures of habit. People tend to rely on doing things the way they've always done things because it's worked and there hasn't been any reason to change. So part of what we do as an organization is you want to provide regular security awareness training. And that means when someone's hired, at least annually thereafter, and really at multiple points throughout the year. And that doesn't have to be, these formal 30-minute, hour or more long sessions. It can be short 5, 10, 15-minute snippets or even a newsletter that just brings certain topics back to the front and center of your attention. Like today's webinar, this might be more you've heard about ransomware and cyber threats than you have in a while. That's good. This helps you refresh, and at least it's not meant to incite any type of fear response. It's just meant to provide you with a knowledge base, provide you with some clarity of, I might know more of what to look out for and why something is a risk. On the financial side, the same thing could be related to implementing, let's say, an improved method for payment disbursements to make sure that anyone that receives a request via an email, let's say the CEO says, I'm at a conference and I need you to go buy 100 gift cards so I can hand them out. And by the way, email me the codes. Sounds a little fishy, but that is a common email scam. So having that, you need to provide some training to say, if someone gives you a request to release a vendor disbursement or set up a new vendor, to have an out-of-band process to verify that before money goes out the door. And it's, again, risk management that comes along with training and repetition, and hopefully some ingenuity there to keep folks interested.